everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. And you have significantly more flattering light than I do right now. Looking at literary arts, very much kind of on the same kick that a lot of us have spoken about in the past couple weeks, is this idea of having, we all have connections to whatever it may be, artistic form. But literary arts for me is something like I cannot imagine my life without. It's like air. It's like you've held your breath for so long and then you read something really powerful and really strong and you're like, like you remember how to breathe. And that for me is really necessary. I guess initially, as a kid, I was very withdrawn and I was very quiet and contemplative and in my head a lot. There's always so much chaos going around in my family that I would just kind of like sit back and be the observer. And I watched and observed as, all my cousins and my parents and everybody would, we'd read, and I couldn't figure it out. It was painful for me. I was a really slow reader. I remember watching people's eyes go back and forth along the page like they were reading and be super astounded, just shocked that by doing this, like, you could read. I didn't get it. And I remember asking my mom once, I was like, what does it feel like to know how to read? Because I knew it felt good. I knew there was something there. I just couldn't get to it. So it was like this labor of love. It was the source of me having to compensate in elementary school and throughout most of my schooling. I've always had to take shortcuts or do skim reading or Cliff Notes or whatever it may be, just to get reading done, because I'm such a slow reader, which is making this whole endeavor of graduate school really challenging. It's really putting that love to the test. I think that like most people, you come as you're coming into age and you're gaining life experiences, you develop these fantasies that are, at least for me, these fantastical situations were involved in dialogue. I wanted someone to say something that was said in that one romantic movie, or I wanted to stand up to the bad and be the badass and say the thing that so-and-so said, or embody something and project myself in a way that I didn't know how to do. And I would see that strength in oftentimes coming out in words, where you may not be able to physically do it, but you could say it, and you could express yourself and explain yourself in a way that was really powerful. I fell in love with words as opposed to actions in reality. Words have broken my heart. I've broken others' hearts with words. I've said things that have come out of my mouth that have no idea where they came from. And I forever regret saying certain things. I can tear myself down off of not saying something or saying something the wrong way. So much of how we externalize our internal state is through our spoken word or our written word. And I think especially now with this impact and influence of social media, your word no longer is yours. It can go out into the ether. And I think that that gives a lot more power and credence to the literary arts. And looking at some more of kind of the more historical and contextual things, it was through, like passionate convictions of professors and mentors that I have taking their advice and taking their expression and their hopes and their dreams and these conveyed messages and these stories, taking it to heart. And I can see something 1,000 times and hear something 1,000 times, but unless it's portrayed with this elegance and mysticism, it's hard for me to believe. I guess then taking it, even a step further, for me, language is such a form of connection, not only within my professional life. I work with a client who's nonverbal. I've worked with kids that are nonverbal. I've worked with kids and adults that language was really foreign to them, was really abstract to them, and how isolating that can feel or seem. I don't know what that's like, but how confusing and angering it can be to be misunderstood. And the power of language is just turns into chaos, and that chaos can isolate and destroy people, or enrage and radically change the way that they think. On a more personal level, I've done a lot of traveling and kind of personal growth and work down in South America. And when language and something I really depend on for expressing myself and keeping track and tabs on my internal state through journaling gets lost because I can't speak, I can't communicate with them. And then that feeling, I know Yael had spoken about this in our meeting earlier, this like snap where all of a sudden you're communicating. You're talking to somebody in a different language and you have this split brain, and then all of a sudden you start dreaming in Spanish and, sitting around having one too many beers. And I felt like I was speaking perfect Spanish, and feeling so confident and so empowered by that feeling of language on my side that, was a feeling like I've never experienced before. And I think now more specifically for me, literary arts has come full force into my face and into my soul and into my being through, you guys know I'm obsessed with comics, going back to this idea of, visual and literary narrative and storytelling, and expression of literary arts not having to be bound by words. Poetic expression is not just bound by words. There's a story and there's a narration, but it's pictorial. And so much of literary arts historically has been pictorial. And looking at the power of literature today, that's where propaganda comes from. That's where the media sources a lot of shit from. That's where statistics come from. That's how whole educational goals and healthcare systems are developed off of statistics based off of language, I forget all the weird statistical language I learned once, but how you phrase things and how you say things can either prove or disprove something, and then where that language and that message goes is just beyond. And so much of what I think makes music so powerful is the language that it's communicating with. Like looking up songs, the lyrics of songs can always be so potent, and really deepen your connection with people. I want to bring up, this is really kind of one of the weird things, but never mind, I'm out of time. I'm not going to read it. I'll post all of this stuff. You'll see it all. Supplemental quotes. I have a lot of quotes that I'm going to be putting in the shared resource page. I've got some Sojourner Truth, Tom Robbins, Neruda, Michael Cunningham from The Hours. And I think I'm just going to keep adding. Maybe putting in some links to different comic books that I'm really interested in and really loving, as well as this amazing podcast that I'm going to throw in there. It talks mostly about storytelling, which I feel is a literary art form, and it was actually from a website that I think Christine put for us up. It's called Uplift is the podcast, and talks about storytelling, and it's amazing. But thank you all for listening. Strength and honor to us all.